Hi everybody, it's Christina from Pretty Distressed. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be showing you how I refinished this hutch. This is my personal hutch in my dining room, and I've been getting a lot of questions about it lately, so I decided to take today's video to show you how I did the whole process. I'm going to be doing it inside the cabinet doors that were not previously painted and just going over all the specifics and showing you all the products that I used. So if you want to see how I got this look, just keep watching. If you are new here, I am a furniture painter and refinisher, and you will find me on here doing furniture makeovers, painting, staining, paint comparisons. So if you would like to learn about all that stuff, please consider subscribing before you leave. So this is gonna be fun today because this is my personal hutch. This is one of the first big pieces I ever did. And I did this back in 2014 before I started painting for clients and way before I had a YouTube channel. I have been getting questions about it a lot, asking if I have a video on this piece because you guys see it so much in my videos and on Instagram, and I don't. So I wanted to give you the details today on how to recreate this look. Luckily, I didn't paint the inside of the bottom part of the hutch on the cabinet doors because you know me, I like to save paint, especially when I was first starting out. So we're not gonna have a big like before and after like I usually do today, but I hope you guys enjoy this information and maybe tackle this look on your own at home. So let me grab all my stuff, zoom you in, and we'll get started. All the products I'm using today are Annie Sloan, and if you want to find your local Annie Sloan Chalk Paint stockist, you can just go to her website and search for the closest store near you that sells it. Some of them ship online, so you might be able to get it shipped to your house, and I know like my local stockist is doing curbside pickup, so you might be able to do that as well. But if you want to use some other type of paint and just kind of go through the process that I'm doing, you're welcome to do that as well. Lucky for you guys, I had all the materials that I needed in my closet. This Paris gray is actually really old. It's like 3 years old, and I was really nervous that I wasn't gonna be able to use it. But when I opened it and stirred it, it was still in really good shape. The only thing that was wrong with it is that it had a little bit of rust that was falling into the paint. So I decided to strain it with a little bit of cheesecloth. First step, as always, is clean off your piece. I'm just cleaning this with some mild soap and water, rinsing it off, and then drying it off. Always clean and prep your piece. And then I'm using my Annie Sloan small natural bristle brush. I didn't have this brush back when I painted my hutch. I used the Purdy Sash brush, so I'll link that down below if you guys would like to start out with a more affordable brush. That served me very well. I just don't have one anymore. So for my first coat with the Paris gray, I am putting this on in every direction, doing a pretty light coat, not really slapping heavy coat on, but I like a little bit of texture in there, so I'm going back and creating some texture where I don't see any. I'm only gonna be doing one coat with Paris gray. If you don't want it as shabby as mine or as distressed as mine, you can go ahead and add a second coat of the Paris gray once this dries. In fact, I recreated this look for a client several years after I did my hutch, and she didn't want it as shabby, so I did 2 coats of the Paris gray and less distressing, and we didn't use dark wax on it, so it was a lot cleaner. Okay, so once your first coat is dry, after about 2 hours, you can go back in and we are gonna create a wash. So I am using Old White. This is actually an old can of Old White, and she changed her colors up a little bit. So if you're looking for the exact color here that I have Old White, you're really gonna wanna buy Original because that has a little bit of a yellow to it. If you want a white that is more neutral and doesn't have yellow in it, the new Old White is gonna be that color. I know that's a little confusing. I'll link you to the purple painted lady, and she kind of goes through the differences there so you will know. To create a wash, I'm doing a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 part paint, 1 part water. So however you want to measure that out, go ahead and do that and stir it up. It is going to be super watery. It's going to be really easy to splatter this with your paintbrush, so just watch what you're doing and clean up any messes that you get. I use a cheap chip brush for my washes. It's always worked for me. I just dip my paintbrush in my wash mixture and get the excess off. And I'm just going to put my paint on in the same direction. I love the effect that this gives. So I just do a small section at a time, and before the paint dries down, I take a clean t-shirt or rag and just wipe down, again, going in the same direction that I painted it on, and just really rub some of that paint off. So it's gonna leave a beautiful wash of color. Since my paint isn't sealed, when you add water to a previously painted on chalk paint, it is gonna take some of that paint off, so you're kind of distressing and painting at the same time. Be a little gentle with it, because if you really rub, you are gonna pull your paint back off. If you get to a point where you take too much paint off, you can always stop and let that dry and then go back in, add a little bit more paint, let that dry and do your wash on top. So just be really light-handed with it while you go, and don't use a lot of pressure. Just lightly rub and blend in that wash as you go. I actually did not distress this piece with sandpaper at all. It naturally got distressed using the wet rag and the wash. Once that dries, I am ready to add my clear wax. You always want to add clear wax before you do any type of colored wax. It's just going to be easier to control, and it's not going to get muddy on you, and it's easier to fix if you mess up. So I'm just taking my Annie Sloan Wax and Clear and my Annie Sloan wax brush, getting a liberal amount on there and just rubbing it in. And I have told you guys this, and this is something that I learned from Annie, is that you really need to think of wax as hand lotion. You're constantly rubbing it and spreading it out. Don't put like half the can on here. You don't need that. Keep rubbing it until it won't come off your brush anymore, and really work it in. I work it in circles, I work it up and down. When you're working with a color like Paris Gray, it's really easy to see where you have wax and where you don't. So just make sure you're filling in all those spots where you don't see wax. Once I get all my wax on, I come back in with a lint-free cloth and just wipe everything down and make sure that it's all even and that I don't have any globs or really sticky spots. Next, I'm gonna add the dark wax, and I like to do this immediately after I clear wax. I also like to cut my dark wax. This is totally preference. You don't have to do this. You can use it full strength if you want. I find it's easier to work with if I cut it down a little bit and it gets less muddy. So I take a little bit of my dark and a little bit of my clear, and I just mix it up on a paper plate. And then I have a wax brush that is dedicated to dark wax. This is my Coda Artisan brush. It is a waxing brush, and they are still making these, because when I mentioned these in my chalk paint tour, I had that company reach out to me and say, yes, we are still making these brushes. So I love this brush. I've had it for years and years and years. So I am just getting a little bit of dark wax on my brush, really rubbing it in and getting that excess off. And then I'm gonna go around the perimeter of the door. I'm gonna come back in with my clear cloth and just kind of buff it down and make it blend in a little bit more. Sometimes I use a fine steel wool to really buff this in and blend this. I do not have any on hand right now, so I'm just using a rag. If you wanna see more of my dark wax tips, I actually have a couple of dark wax dedicated videos. The audio on them is not awesome, but the information is good, so I will link those down below. If you have a spot where you take it too far with your dark wax, a little trick is that you can go in with your clear wax, get that on a rag, and just kind of buff and blend where that section is that's too shaded, and it'll start lifting some of that dark wax up. I know dark wax can be intimidating, but you're not gonna ruin your piece. You gotta just play with it a little bit and see what you like. Originally, this dresser had mirrors on the back, and I stripped those off and went to Home Depot and got a paneling of beadboard, and then got some brad nails and just nailed these panels onto the back of the hutch. And I painted that beadboard with old white and painted all the shelving old white just to have some contrast between the hutch and the shelving. These shelves were actually glass, and you can paint right over glass with chalk paint. I think I did 2 or 3 coats and just sealed it with wax the same way I do with wood. I ripped the lights out just because I wanted it to have like a rustic old feel, and I took the glass panels out of the doors. I just don't like glass in my furniture, but you can definitely keep those in if you want to. And luckily, whoever had this in the family before us saved the original hardware. And so I just took all of that and painted it old white and waxed it and then attached it back to the hutch. Like I said, I painted this 6 years ago, and we have moved this thing and definitely used it every day, and it is still holding up. I really love this piece, and I did it before I had a ton of technique. So I hope this video encourages you that you could tackle something like this on your own. Thank you guys for joining me for today's project. If you have any questions about anything I went over today, you can leave those down in the comment box below. I will be back with another project next week. Thanks for being here, and I will see you guys next time. Oh, crap. Oh, I forgot to clear wax it. That's why that looks so hideous. Oops. I think you should come on camera and show everybody that. You kind of look like Justin Bieber. Don't sing, don't sing. Copyright infringement.
You know I got that yummy.
That's funny.